Hello everyone. I, Forum Patel from LG School of Law, would like to welcome you all very warmly in the sessions of the media and the tort law. Friends, in the previous sessions, we discussed about the concept of the media with regard to the criminal law, including the concept of the obscenity, including the concept of the defamation, its exceptions, certain very important cases, and of course the concept of the sedition. So, in this session, we shall be talking about the media and tort law, including the concept of the defamation, slander, libel, and negligence as a very important part. So, friends, let's get started. Tort law, as we all know, is known as the civil wrong. So, when we are talking about controlling the media with the civil wrongs, what would that imply? That is the reason there are three main concepts under the tort law that can be covered rather when we are talking about the media segment. The first amongst that is the defamation. The India's most dreadful professional hazard is the defamation litigation. In fact, a journalist who reports in a hurry to meet the deadlines amidst the competition is more vulnerable for both the civil suits demanding compensation for defamation and also a criminal charge. Because the defamation is two-in-one choice available to every citizen to protect his reputation against any defamatory publications, one can either sue for the damages or also prosecute the defamator. Now, this concept, the defamation concept, can also be taken as a ground on which the constitutional limitations on the right to freedom of speech and expression as mentioned under Article 19 subclause 2 could be legally imposed. Thus, the expression defamation has been given constitutional status also. This word has been discussed in many different laws, such as, of course, the Constitution, tort law, even the criminal law. So, when it comes to the media and tort law, this word include the expressions like libel, slander, etc. Now, libel and slander covering many other species of the libel, such as obscene libel, seditious libel, or any other libel, the law of the defamation does not infringes the right to freedom of speech and expression which has been guaranteed by our constitution. This concept would be falling under the concept of the actionable wrong which is mentioned in the entry 8 of the concurrent list in the 11th schedule of the constitution. Criminal law would fall under the concurrent list. This would cover the offense of the defamation. The question of the defamation is frequently arise in regard to the newspaper itself. It is both crime as well as civil wrong as we discussed. The criminal law of the defamation is codified in India. If state wants to prohibit a particular conduct, it has to specifically define it and pass a law prospectively to punish such conduct. This is a constitutional right under 20 subclause 1. However, the civil wrong of the defamation is not a codified law in India, and the rules and the principles for the liability that are applied by our courts, they are those which are borrowed from the common law explained in the United Kingdom. When we are talking about the right of the reputation, it becomes one of the very most important things in a man's life. The right of the reputation is a jus in rem which can be defined as a right, and of course the good which one individual is free to enjoy against the whole world. Even the Supreme Court was of this opinion in State of Bihar versus Lal Krishna Advani case. But when we are talking about the concept of the defamation, we need to understand the concept that would explain the word defamation. Now, it is actionable without proof of its falsity. Typically, these elements of the defamation that can be included as the false and defamatory statement concerning any other individual, the publication of that statement to a third party, if the defamatory matter is of the public concern, fault amounting at least to negligence on the part of the publisher, and damages of course that can be given to the plaintiff. Our jurists are no longer there, but they have the impact on the concepts of the law. As per Salmond, of course, the late jurist, he stated that the wrong of the defamation it lies in the publication of a false and defamatory statement about any other person without lawful justification. According to any other thinker, that is Underhill, such a statement would become defamation if it is made about another without just cause or excuse, whereby he suffers the injury to his reputation out of that act. So when we are talking about media and tort law and the defamation under that, slander and libel would be two concepts which would be covered. A slander is a false and defamatory statement by spoken words or gestures trending to injure the reputation of any other person. So, when we are talking about the slander, it would be the statement spoken by words or any gestures to injure the reputation of the another. It is a civil wrong only where a document contains the defamatory statement is published by being read out to the third person, or where the publication of the defamatory statement is to a clerk to whom it is dictated. The communication in either case would amount to slander and not libel. Then, what do you mean by libel, my friends? The concept of the libel, it differs from the concept of the slander in its procedure, remedy, and of course the seriousness. In the common law, a libel is a criminal offense as well as the civil wrong also, but a slander is only civil wrong. Though the words may have happened to come within the criminal law as being the blasphemous, foreign, seditious or obscene, or as being a sociality to the commitment of the crime, or even the contempt of court. Under the IPC, both libel and slander are criminal offences. A libel is in itself an infringement of a right, and no actual damages needs to be proven in order to have the action. At common law, a slander is actionable only when the special damages can be proven to have its natural consequences, or when it conveys certain imputations. Libel is actionable per se, but generally slander is not. Let's put it in a simple word, my friend. Libel is a written defamation while slander is a spoken defamation. It is stated that libel is addressed to the eye, slander is addressed to ear. Salman questioned this and suggested that libel is defamation crystallized into some parament forms, while slander is conveyed by some transit methods of the expression. The court had, of course, certain opinions with regard to the same thing. The court, in one of the cases of the Metro Goldwyn Mayer picture, it held that the defamation is a talking film was, of course, libel, but there is no authority as to whether the defamatory matter which recorded in a gramophone disc accompanied by any other pictorial or any other matter is libel or slander. In India, between the libel and the slander on the point whether it is actionable without proof of special damage has to be recognized. In this country, both libel and slander are criminal offences, of course, under the IPC, and both of them are actionable in the civil without proof of the special damages. One of the cases, Miss Ramdhara versus Fulavati Bai, slander, it was held that slander may be the result of a sudden provocation which is uttered in the heat of the moment, while the libel implies greater deliberation and raises the suggestion of the malice. That is, libel is likely to cause more harm to a person defamed than slander, because there is a strong tendency everywhere on the part of most of the people who believe anything that they see in the print. That means libel is somewhat grievous in its own nature in our country, which is to be interpreted rather than slander. So when we are talking about the nature of the wrongs, my friend, how libel and slander would be having an impact on that. Libel, if it tends to provoke the breach of the peace, is a crime as well as the tort. Slander as such is never criminal. All the spoken words may be punishable, of course, as being reasonable, seditious, or any other nature. The distinction between libel and slander is not, of course, recognized in India. However, both are criminal offences only. So we need to have certain essentials of the defamation when we are talking about the tort law. There are three essentials to be established in a civil action for the defamation. Plaintiff must prove that the words are defamatory, they refer to the plaintiff, and they were published. So these are the three essential elements that needs to be proven when we are talking about the defamation. So when we are talking about the concept of the defamation under tort law, I hope you remember the concepts of the innuendo that we discussed under the criminal law. What do you mean by innuendo? Let's have a quick review with that. Innuendo means the words which are not defamatory in their ordinary sense, but it may nevertheless convey a defamatory meaning owing to that circumstances when it was spoken. So it is, of course, a defamation at the time when the happening of that circumstances was there. An innuendo has to be pleaded and proven. The statement of the claims must set out the fact and the circumstances which would have induced reasonable persons. The plaintiff cannot at the trial allege some other hidden meaning which he has not pleaded in the statement of the claims. This is all that we talked about, the concept of the defamation. It would include the concept of the slander, libel, and of course the innuendo that we discussed with the criminal law aspect. Let's have a quick look at the Indian examples where the concepts has been deliberately explained by the courts. In T.V. Ramasubha Iyer and others versus A.M. Ahmed Mohiuddin, this case there was a news item which was published in the Dinamalan dated 1981, now stating that a person who is called King of Agrabatis had smuggled opium into Ceylon and that he was arrested by Madras police. The respondent alleging that he said publication constituted a defamation of him since the news item was understood to refer to him and it instituted the damages suit for a sum of 5,000 rupees. The subordinate judge found the newspaper guilty of the defamation though he did not intend to defame him and publish a correction stating that the news that had appeared was not referred to the plaintiff. Following this decision, the House of Lords in Hulton versus Company versus John, the judge came to the conclusion that the intention was not the test of the liability. First appeal was of course dismissed by the district judge and the second appeal was preferred. The appellate court followed the dissenting opinion of Lord Justice Fletcher Moulton in the Hulton case. Fletcher stated that the defendant is not guilty of the libel unless he wrote and published the defamatory words of and concerning the plaintiff, in other words, unless he intended to harm the plaintiff. The appellate court observed that the law of the defamation is a part of the tort law as applied and enforced under the common law of England is applicable to this country only on the basis of the justice, equity and good conscience. Lord Fletcher's opinion was much more concerned with the justice, equity than the law of the England that was stated by the appellate court. So we can state that unless the defamatory reference to the plaintiff is published somewhere, there is no action that can be arised. Thus, other ingredient of the defamation can be publication, falsely statement and speciality of the damagement or rather speciality of damages. That means communication of defamatory words to a third party is deemed to be a publication. So when we are talking about publication, it is defined as making known the defamatory matter after it has been written to some person other than the person to whom it is written. If nobody else sees the libel or hears the slander except the person defamed, the law gives him no cause of action because there cannot be publication of a defamatory matter on oneself. That means, my friend, the person needs to be actioned or rather he needs to be drawn to the court of law when it has been spoken and heard or written and seen by the third party when it comes to the concept of the defamation. In Nemichand versus Khemraj, the defendant made some wild imputations in their speeches against the plaintiff for molesting women. Now, extracting money by unlawful means and remaining absent from the duty from railway workshops. The extract of these speeches were published by Nemichand in a leaflet. Now, the plaintiff suffered loss of reputation, of course, and suspended him from the services as a result of that leaflet publication. The district judge concluded that there was no absolute evidence to show that Nemichandra published the pamphlet and he was liable for the payment of the damages. Mere printing is not enough. It must reach to some of the people throughout his publication. Only then it can be called as the publication, which is an essential ingredient in making the defamation as an actionable wrong. So Nemichand in this case was not held liable in the appeal. That means, my friend, that the publication is not only required to be there on the paper, it has to reach to the other party to become the actionable claim. So when we are talking about the concept of the defamation, in a civil action, a media person can plead the defenses of the truth as a complete justification for making the defamous comment, or that he made a fair comment, or that he was protested by the privilege to make such comments. So that would bring us to the next topic, that is defenses under the defamation concept. The first defense that can be taken into consideration is truth. Truth brings back the level of the fame of the defendant in the defamation cases, the extent of the liability and the role of the truth in experiencing that the liability is discussed in certain case laws. Now, that means that the truth is one of the exceptions to the defamatory statements. It is to be noted that all the defamatory words are presumed to be false and the plaintiff is not required to give evidence show that they are false, but the defendant rebut his presumption by giving evidence in support of his plea that the words are substantially true. That would be the defense when we are talking about the tort law and the defamation. When it comes to truth in our country, in India also, truth is a complete defense to a civil action for libel. The burden of the proof of the defense of the justification, it lies on the defendant, of course. Now, some eminent jurists felt that the need to change this concept of making the truth as the whole defense in the civil cases. They were of the opinion that the law should require that publication of the statement must be proved to be for the public to good if it is to be immune from the liability. Now, this was the case where PM Bakshi had given its own opinion on the same. If the law seriously wants to protect the reputation, truth in itself should not be a defense to a civil action for the defamation. The fact that a woman is unchaste does not, for example, morally justifies B in publicizing unchastity. No social interest is served by allowing B to circulate such statements. If you are trying to justify the concepts of the defamation, there are many opinions with regard to the same thing. One of the opinion, as we stated, was by PM Bakshi ji, which is of course defendant must establish the public good also, and truth cannot be wholly taken as the defense when we are talking about the defamation under tort and media law. The second defense after truth would be the fair comment. A fair comment or bona fide comment is also a statement of the opinion based on the fact of the public matter which concerns them. So to say that the soldier is deserted in a statement of a fact, while to say he is deserted and hence a coward soldier is an expression of the opinion. But every citizen is having a right to make the legitimate and fair comment on the public affairs. So they would be allowed, like the affairs of the state or administration of the justice or public institutions, authorities, or religious matters, or any of the books or any other movies or theater or any other affair which is there going on which is with regard to the general public. So facts comments should be easily distinguishable from the readers that has the clear interference with the judgment whenever it is possible. So comment should not be mixed up with the facts and it should not be taken as a liability part when it comes to the court. So that has also to be treated as one of the exceptions when we are talking about defamation. When it comes to the media regulation and the defamation under tort law, in Dainik Bhaskar versus Madhusudan Bhaskar in 1991, it was held that the court must analyze the alleged defamatory news and views with due care, caution, and of course circumspection, and the issue hypersensitive in doing so for the role of the press as it was against the social evil which is progressively acquiring the greater importance and newer dimensions with the niche found by the investigative journalisms. The third defense might be taken as a general public interest. The person or the newspaper who wants to communicate the news to the general public must also have a duty to communicate, and the person to whom the communication is made must have a corresponding duty or interest to receive the same. This privilege is based on the principle that such communications are protected for the common convenience and welfare of the society. Here, my friends, you can definitely make relevance with the case law that we discussed under the criminal law, that is the New York Times rule, New York Times Company versus Sullivan case, my friends, which expanded the scope of the free speech to critically comment upon the conduct of the public officials. Even if the utterance is defamatory falsehood about the public officials, it was not held to be actionable, provided that it was published in good faith without actual malice, my friends. This rule has been made applicable in many other cases and it has been taken as a baseline to decide the cases of the defamation when it comes to either tort law or the criminal law also. Now, whenever such kind of action is happening, we need to have the damages on the back hand to protect the individual. So the remedies available would be the damages, Of course, under the law of the tort. Next would be called as the injunction, and such other remedies are available. So, this was all about the media and the tort law whenever we are talking about the media segment. Friends, in the next session, we shall be starting with the media and the part of the legislation. Till then, stay tuned and keep learning.